I love this time of night. Just quiet in the house. Everyone's asleep except me. If you can hear quiet enough, you can hear the rain. Here, I'll show you. It's quite peaceful this time of night. That's why I like recording when nobody's bothering me or cars going by. Just me and my thoughts about children's cardboard. So let's so I got a story today to share with you that happened 2 days ago, 1 day ago, 2 days ago. My trip down to Florida, but we'll get into that. Hey, my name is Slade, Grail Collectibles. Welcome back to another video. So sadly, no clickbait here. I almost was scammed around $3,600 with my recent purchase. TDLR, too long didn't read, for this whole video. If you just want to click off now, like, I don't really care. It's so very important to buy the card and not the grade. And we will get into why that is here in a second. So, hey, like I said, Slade, Great Little Collectibles, here sharing my knowledge, my experience with the world, with my whole 500 people who watch me, every single day or whatever. But appreciate you guys clicking on the video. Appreciate you guys, supporting this channel and everything I do. Supporting, just listening to me, I guess, and for those who reach out to me and everything. But I'm not here to ramble on and everything. Wanted to get into the story of how I was almost scammed of $3,600. It all started when someone reached out to me wanting to purchase my PSA 8 Gold Star Rayquaza or Rayquaza. I never thought I would sell that card, but I really thought long and hard about it, and I didn't realize how close especially the offer that was offered to me on my PSA 8 Rayquaza. The difference between the PSA 8 and the PSA 9 price point is actually fairly close. So it's about, I'll put the values on the screen, but it's about a $2,000 difference, and I didn't realize that. Maybe a little bit more, but I didn't realize that. I didn't know how close the values are. Obviously, between the 9 and the 10, significant. But I guess I just wanted a better copy of mine. I know mine had whitening on the bottom, and I had the ability to sell 3 cards and upgrade my PSA 8 Rayquaza to a PSA 9 Rayquaza. And especially this time where a lot of the values are kind of down. I know even Gold Stars are kind of creeping up there. But I was like, why not jump upgrade to PSA 9? Obviously, a PSA 10 won't ever happen, but a PSA 9 is more feasible. So I started looking around. On eBay, started putting feelers out on Facebook, on Instagram, and I came across an eBay post for $8,999 for this Rayquaza Gold Star PSA 9. I'll put the screen grabs or the scans on the screen here, but it looked really good, especially the back. I was a little concerned on the edges, so I reached out to this person. I noticed it was actually a card store in Florida, which was approximately 6 hours from me. And I reached out and like, hey, I am very interested in your card. What would you take for it? And immediately they said, if you want it shipped to you, 7% off of eBay fees, and we will ship it to you. And I was like, I was going back and forth. They were the cheapest on eBay, but I was kind of going back and forth, with them. And I was like, hey, what if I showed up to your store with cash on hand, and like in a few days? And they were like, okay, we can take it down to $8,000. And I was like, oh, okay, that's feasible. The payment of my Rayquaza PC-8 went through. I sold that guy for 65 goods and services, so it came down to 63 cash, 6,300. And I sold 2 other cards to the person from Romania for about $1,900. So I was right at like $8,300 that I just got in. And I was like, why not take this opportunity to upgrade my Rayquaza that I did have. And I sold my PC-8 Rayquaza in preparation for buying this PC-9. So I was like, okay, great. Why not take a trip down to Florida? Why not? Like I said, I'm only 6 hours away, and so I actually asked my sister, like, hey, you wanna go down? Yeah, I'm crazy enough. Like, hey, you wanna go down to Florida for a day? Go on the beach and then come back up. And she was crazy enough. She's like, yeah, sure, why not? She hasn't been down to Florida in a little bit, and thought it was a cool little bonding time as well with me and her, and that it was a really fun trip. So I got everything prepared. Fun thing, going to the bank and asking for $8,000 in cash, they're going to have some questions, obviously, making sure you're not paying some prince over in Africa or whatever to those scams reach out like, oh, there's a Nigerian prince or whatever, you're related to them and we just need you to send this, to get your inheritance or whatever. I'm guessing they were just asking about that, but I was like, I'm getting a used car, that kind of thing. So they were like, okay, great, and they gave me the $8,000 in cash. So I've actually never held $8,000 in cash. It was pretty cool. All in this electronic age and everything, it's all just online, just numbers. But it was a big thing. It was 8,000. People get a little crazy when it comes down to you showing up and saying, hey, I'll pay PayPal goods and services or whatever, versus like, hey, boom, here's the cash type of deal. So that's kind of what I kind of visioned, that I was going to get a better deal if I just paid cash for this Rayquaza in Florida. And so I called the guy like, hey, I'm set on buying this from you. I will be down there this weekend. Oh man, yeah, it was 2 days ago because it was Saturday. I'm making this right off the cuff. This video right off the cuff. But I was like, hey, I'm going to be there Saturday around noon. I'm just letting you know that I'm very serious about this card. Could you send me important pictures of it, like front and back pictures of it? And he's like, yeah, sure. What's your phone number? He sent me them. I have an Android, and I guess he had an iPhone, and they kind of came over fuzzy. But everything that I could look on, the scans especially, it looked good. It really looked good. I should have looked over the scans like a little bit closer, but they looked good. It was a PSA9. I think it was a 4.2 cert or a little bit less cert. But it looked really good. The main thing was the edges, making sure it wasn't really whitening and everything, but it was super blue around the edges, no real whitening or anything. So I was like dead on set, like, okay, I'll be down there, and it was $8,000 cash. So I withdrew the money from the bank, and me and my sister woke up at 5. I think she woke up around the same, but we left Georgia around 6 o'clock in the morning. And we had a 6.5 hour drive. It was fun. We were jamming out in the car, and we were on the way down. She took some goofy pictures of me and all that kind of stuff. She's about to go to college and everything. So, talking about personal stuff, we're talking about life and everything. So, on the way down, she's probably gonna watch this video right now or whatever. But she watches me and she likes my ramblings, I guess. But about my my passion about collecting cardboard. But she supports and everything, and I like that she supports me. But anyway, we headed down there, like I said, it was 6.5 hours drive. It wasn't that bad. I've driven way worse. I like driving. She likes, driving. We were listening to music and everything, passed the time pretty well. And we arrived in Florida around noon. So exactly when I predicted that I was going to be down there. So we rolled up to the card shop. It's been there a while, actually told me since 1996 they've been down there, and that's literally how old I am. So they've been down there for 27 years, and they're more tilted, obviously, on the sports cards. And the whole building is really cool, as painting on the outside, everything. Maybe if you're local to Florida, you know where I'm talking about. But went down to Florida. This was in Jacksonville, Florida, and so we went down there. Showed up. There was a lot of people in the store, which is a good sign. I like local stores actually getting business and thriving in this time, especially during like the down market, so to say. But showed up. They had a really good selection of raw cards as well as sealed Pokemon, but not a whole bunch of graded cards. They had maybe 15 cards on the top shelf behind this glass. But we walked in, looked around, and then we saw the owner. I was like, "Hey, how you doing? My name's Slade. Talked to you on the phone." He's like, "Oh yeah, great." And he brought me over. I had my sister hold the cash in her purse or whatever, because like we were kind of go back and forth in the car. Like, okay, how should we do this? Should I go in first, and then I'll call you, and then you go in? I'm like, it's just a lot. It's different than working with like PayPal goods and services, where you can do it on your phone versus like cash on your person. But anyway, so we go up, start talking to the guy. He's like, yeah, here we go. He's an elderly fellow. He was probably in his 50s, 50 something, but my dad's age. So go up, see the Rayquaza PC9. I'll look exactly where I thought or I wanted to see where the corners were and everything. Maybe a tad bit of whitening, but the back looked phenomenal. I mean, looked almost PSA 10, but it looked phenomenal. Looked on the front, looked at the shine, it looked great. Now, given we were inside, so wasn't the great light coming in and everything, but I was like, man, this is awesome. I will definitely get it. Do you have anything else? And so he was like, oh yeah, we have. I looked on his catalog before coming to Florida, and I was like, oh man, he had another card that I have right here. So I brought down some cards to see if I bartered it. Like, hey, I'm putting down $8,000 cash. Could we do a trade on another card that I was looking at? I was looking at a first edition PSA 10 Mewtwo, shiny Mewtwo, and he was like, yeah, what do you have? And so I had a Gold Star Celebi. I had a Legendary Collection Blastoise Reverse Holo PSA 9. The Celebi was a PSA 9. And then I had one other card. Oh, duh. I mean, I had a first edition PSA 8 shiny Mewtwo. So I'm in a sense upgrading my PSA 8 to PSA 10. And I did that with PSA 8, a Celebi Gold Star PSA 9, a Reverse Holo Legendary Collection Blastoise PSA 9, and $900 cash. And I was able to upgrade it, and it is right here. Beautiful, beautiful card. I looked over this card plenty of times. Man, first edition shiny Mewtwo. Didn't think I'd ever own it, but here it is. Beautiful. I'll give you close-up pictures of it and everything, or video, but it is a beautiful card. No whitening, very, very little whitening at all, but just beautiful, beautiful card. I was able to upgrade it. I was like, great. I got a first edition shiny Mewtwo. I got a Gold Star Rayquaza PSA 9. I was like, this is awesome. I did bring one other card. It's not here, but I brought a Legendary Collection Charizard Reverse Holo PSA 8. And if he didn't accept one of the other three cards, I could throw that down because it's about $2,000 in trade value. So that would have, I was going to get that as well. I mean, I was going down to Florida, traveling all this about, round trip 800 miles. So I have a Honda Civic, so it was only about $60 in gas, which is awesome. But yeah, 800 miles round trip. Not an easy trip. So anyway, I was like, I'm going to get something else. And so I still had the Legendary Collection Charizard in my pocket. I was walking around the store, looking at the other things, seeing if I could do another trade. He did have a first edition Holo Umbreon, the original OG, moon in the background, Holo, beautiful Umbreon. It was a PC 9. and he was asking, oh, what was he asking? $1,800 on that thing? Oh, a little bit less, 1,600, something like that. And I'm not too familiar with that card, so I didn't know if that was a good price or a bad price. He was going directly off of eBay last sold, so I knew it was like the most recent price and everything. So, but I wasn't sold on it, and so I wanted to keep the Legendary Collection Charizard, Reverse Holo Charizard PSA 8, because I do have a buyer, cash buyer, that is going to buy it from me for around $2,000, $2,200. So I was like, I got my Reverse Holo, or I got my Shining Mewtwo, and so I was good. So then it was, we did the deed, and we were gonna go and celebrate, go on the beach. We were gonna go barbecue and everything. So we got out of the car. I was like, oh, this is awesome, and then I whip out the card. I whip out the PC9 Gold Star Rayquaza, and once I held it up to the light, my heart sunk. I will show you a picture of the Rayquaza again, but then I will zoom in on the part that I blatantly saw. When the light hit it, I noticed instantly a glimmering coming from the tail of Rayquaza. It was surface damage from the card. The paint in the card was ripped up. It looked like the card was put on its face and then slid a little bit, and then that was it. The back looked phenomenal. There was obviously silvering. There's going to be silvering obviously in those old cards. But not only that, but the holo was damaged. It was scratched. But the main thing, and I was like, okay, I was on the board already, but then the main thing was that there was actual paint damage on the tail of Rayquaza. So immediately, I know PSA grading standards, and this did not meet the PSA 9 standard. It did not. I understand some people are like, oh, I only buy 60 mil above or 60 mil plus cards, and I don't buy anything older, and I think the certs are population control or whatever. Maybe it was a time in a period where they were getting a lot of graders in and they couldn't train them a bunch, but this was flat on PSA. I don't think the owner, he was an elderly fellow, so he didn't really If anybody sends some cards off to PSA, it's not their job to assess the card. It's not their job. They are paying someone to assess the card. So I am not putting blame at all on the owner of this card. I don't think he was doing anything scammy, that he was purposely like, oh, I know this isn't a PSA 9, so I'm going to sell it just quickly off to someone. I don't think that was the case at all. And please don't go and bother this person or whatever. I just don't think this is the case at all. It was blatantly on PSA. This should have been a PSA 6 to PSA 7 grade. But it was a PSA 6 to PSA 7 grade in a PSA 9 grade. So I don't know if they actually flipped the numbers around or something. But this did not meet the PSA 9 standard of a mint card. This was not mint at all. There was physical damage on the paint, as well as scratches on the holo foil, as well as silvering. My PSA 8 card was in phenomenal, better condition than this PSA 9 copy. And like I said, I put it to the light. My heart sank. I was like, oh my gosh, I just spent $8,000 on this PSA 6 to PSA 7 Gold Star Rayquaza. Oh, man, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And, my sister was like, oh, yeah, let's go to barbecue or whatever. So I was like, I kind of blocked it out for a second. I drove off, and we went and got barbecue. It was awesome, but my heart was just like, oh, my gosh. Oh, I can't stomach this. I was like a little bit nauseous as well. And then, after barbecue, we were done with everything else. I told my sister, like, hey, we need to go back to the card store. And she's like, what's going on? And I showed her the card. And she's like, whoa, yeah, you need to go talk to him. Again, I'm not a PSA grader, but I know PSA standard, and this was just not PSA standard. And if you are in the market for a Gold Star Rayquaza, please do not buy this copy. Please, I'll put it on the picture. I'll put it on the screen now. Please do not buy this copy. And sadly, PSA just drops the ball sometimes. Just like any grading company. They're human. They make mistakes. I honestly think the grader looked at the back and saw no whitening at all. And they're like, oh, this is great. And just glanced at the front. Like, okay, cool. PSA 9. Yeah, not the case whatsoever. So I went back to the store, and I talked to the owner. He was more than willing to give me back my money and everything, and he was like, oh, there's damage here, and he took off his glasses, looked at it, and he was like, oh, I thought, not many people hold a Rayquaza, a Gold Star Rayquaza, because they're so rare. But he was like, oh, I thought that was part of the holofoil or whatever. I'm not saying that he was trying to do me dirty or anything, but he was more than willing to give me back my money and everything, so he did. I got back my money, and then it was like a huge burden off my shoulders. I was like, oh my gosh, thank God that I was able to get back the $8,000 for this specific card. Then I left the card store, and we went, we had barbecue and everything, and, before that, but we went to the beach, and we had a phenomenal time at the beach, just walking around the beach, collecting shells and everything, enjoying it. I didn't want to, big stinker, like, oh, we drove almost 7 hours down to Florida to just not buy it and went back. I do see it as a win because I got this shiny Mewtwo, first edition. I probably could have gotten it cheaper somewhere else. I paid close to $3,000 for this with trade and everything. It last sold was $2,800. I probably could have gotten it a little bit cheaper, but I wasn't driving down to Florida for nothing, So I got the shiny Mewtwo first edition, awesome card. It's a 41 mil cert. It is everything I want in a PSA 10. It's everything I want. But I was like, I don't want to make this a stinker day or whatever. Let's have fun. And so we went to the beach, got in the water. It was insanely cold. It was probably 42 degrees, some of that sort. But it was such a relief that I was like, I'm so glad. There was an option he gave me that like, hey, you can send me the 7% off the listing, which will have been $8,300, some of that, and I can ship you the card. That would have been an actual nightmare. I'm so glad that I did drive down there and actually see the card in person. And with any type of deal that big, it's like an automatic. I'm automatically going to do that because it's so much cash and there's so much on the line that I'm like, I wasn't certain on the condition because I saw the PSA scans, but they aren't perfect. Actually, they weren't even PSA scans. He provided the scans because it was a cert that was old enough that PSA didn't even do the scans. So I'm actually really glad that I went down there, viewed the card, and at the end of the day, PSA, they employ humans. Humans make mistakes, and robots aren't perfect either. AGS, technically robots are perfect or whatever, but there is a thing called eye appeal that there are certain aspects of grading a card that you can't just put into numbers type of thing. And I don't think the future is AGS. I don't want to get into that. I don't think the future is AI. I really don't think so with grading, aspect of grading, because at the end of the day, we're humans. Humans are owning these and humans are appreciating these, so humans should grade these. That's my stance on it. I understand, like, if you can AGS, like, better to them and everything. If you can find a really good card and it's AGS and it's phenomenal. Their website's phenomenal. You can literally see the scans and all that kind of stuff. I really like that. It's like the transparency is kind of lifted, that you're not just relying on a human that graded it and possibly graded it wrong. And we'll see where that goes in the future. But I don't think it should be 100% human or 100% computer graded. I know PSA, some part of I think their centering is computerized now, where they just let the computer center and make sure that it's centered and everything, but they let I think that's the only aspect of the grading card in PSA they do in computer. Everything else is human graded. But again, I'm so glad I went down there. We had fun at the beach. Yeah, it was beautiful down there. I'm so glad I live in Georgia because I'm an hour from the mountains. well, 5 hours from the beach. Technically, I'm a little bit closer to the beach because I can go, you know, to North Carolina. I'm maybe like 3 hours, 3.5 hours from the beach, and I am 30 minutes from the lake. The only different biome that I'm thinking of, I guess swamp, but who wants to go to a swamp? Swamp's in Savannah, but desert, we don't have desert out here. So I guess the closest is like, you know, going west. But, you know, we have, here in Georgia, I think we're strategically placed that we can go to all the different areas. We can enjoy the Rocky Mountains and all the different, or the Smoky Mountains, and enjoy that, and then we can go to the beach, and then we can go to the lake. I think that's why a lot of people love Georgia. But anyway, regardless, yeah, so the difference between, and to give you perspective, the difference between a PSA 7 and a PSA 9 is about $3,600. That's where I got that number. And, you know, I didn't feel if I was like, okay, I can just, you know, this is not a copy I want. I could just throw it on eBay, sell it real quick, and, you know, stick another collector with it. But I just could not settle with that. I could not come to terms that, like, hey, I understand this is a PSA 9 graded card by PSA. They graded it. I'm not a grader. I just didn't want to do that. I just didn't want to do that to another collector. And thankfully, I had another PSA 9 Rayquaza ready to go, like in the barrel. Another person, another collector had one, and it was actually cheaper. It was actually $7,600. And I reached out to him like, hey, I saw your scans before, your pictures before. Could I have, a picture of this, picture of this, picture of that? I circled different things on the card. He's like, yeah, totally. And he took pictures of it. It was not damage to the card that I originally thought, and I was able to do a deal with him. So it's actually coming in a few days, my Rayquaza, PSA 9, and this is actually a PSA 9 condition card. And I'm so glad that I'm able to add it to my collection. And it didn't cost me, you know, a card that I wouldn't appreciate. So thankfully, the business owner was understanding. He gave me back my cash. I just dropped it off yesterday. I'm not holding $8,000 in this house. Some bozo coming in here and stealing all my stuff or whatever. But I dropped it off to the bank, and it's in the bank and transferred to my account and everything. But I'm so glad that I was able to go down to Florida, have a little trip with my sister, you know, all that kind of stuff. It was a good, fun trip, even though it was a little bit of stinker. But at the end of the day, I did get the Rayquaza I want, and I'll show that in a future video too, close-ups and everything. But I also got my Shining Mewtwo First Edition. I have a Shining Charizard, but non-First Edition. But again, my favorite Pokemon is Mewtwo, obviously. PSA 10, I never thought I'd own a PSA 10 Shiny Mewtwo. I didn't realize, compared to all these other, compared to the ponchos, compared to the crazy Rayquaza, like, you know, above $5,000 or whatever, but this was $3,000, so it was a lot easier to stomach, in my eyes, easier to stomach. It's still a month paycheck, you know. But anyway, that's my story on the manner that you have to do your due diligence. You're spending your collector dollars, and you have to spend them wisely. You have to buy the card, not the grade. I understand that I'm buying a grade of a PSA 9, but I wanted to make sure that that card is PSA 9 standard. That card is up to the par. And I did. And I made sure there was a mistake that PSA did, and I was like, hey, I'm not paying for this. I'm buying the card, not the grade. And in the future, people could be super stingent, like on that aspect of, like, if you go to sell, like, oh, this is misgraded, or this is not a true. You want, if you're gonna pay the premium of a PSA 9, especially PSA 10, you want to make sure it is actually that quality. And maybe in the future video, I'll show you exactly what makes a PSA 10 versus a 9. I know nowadays, yeah, it is really, really stingent nowadays. You know, so many people play, oh, pop control, or so many people are like, you know, they were so much lenient way back in the day. And I would say yes, there is some truth to that. There is some truth that nowadays they are a lot somewhat harsher on grades. But I've gotten grades back that they didn't match up, even with the 80 mil certs. So it all depends on humans. It all depends on humans. That's why I would suggest for anybody submitting a PSA, you submit 20 bulk, obviously, to make the minimum, but you split it up. Do not submit a 200 card submission, because you're having the risk some bozo who's new to PSA grade, or who's veteran, just super strict, and they woke up and someone kicked their dog in the morning or whatever, and they're like, hey, no one's getting a PSA 10 today. And there is some truth to that. At the end of the day, like I said, these are humans. They are going to grade how they view. Some guy could have just went through 200 cards of Japanese cards, and then you submitted 200 cards of English cards, and he's going to probably be really strict on you because his eyes so used to the Japanese, but now he's going to the English, and there's some truth to that. So what I would suggest, splitting it up in 20 card segments. That's what I've always done. Or if it is too much of a hassle, doing like 20, 30, 40, 20, 30, something of that sort. But do not submit a 200 card submission unless they're Japanese modern, honestly. There's a lot of different strategic strategies that some people use, like they only submit Japanese modern or Japanese in one submission, and then another submission they submit all English, or they in the same submission do English first, and then on the later half they do Japanese, so they're kind of used to the okay quality of English, but then the perfect, everyone gets a 10 on Japanese modern. There's so many strategic out there, but what I do is just divided up, and the reason for that is because I'm trying to get the average grade. If I have some veteran that's gives everything 9s, some bozo that doesn't know how to do anything grades everything 10, and then some guys in the middle, and I'm submitting 3 different versions, I'm getting the average of all those grades, so to say, if you understand what I'm trying to say. So you're getting the average of that, and that's what I personally do. But again, I'm glad I went to Florida. Glad I spent the time to go down there and was able to. Honestly, it was a fun trip. Got some cool shells. Got a cool Mewtwo, and I got some experience with understanding how a PSA 9 can look when a bad grader or an unskilled grader grades a card. So that's all I got. Hopefully learned about this and learned from my experience spending all that gas to go down to Florida. But take this and run with it, and understand, even though you're looking at scans, it's really hard to miss. Again, I'll put up the picture. It's really hard to miss that mark on the right, especially if other things are happening in the holo and everything. Always ask if it's a high purchase dollar amount. I would suggest asking for more additional photos. I know there's a stipulation of someone's buying a $20 card or $50 card. Like, hey, can I have a picture of this? And 9 out of 10 times they don't buy the card. I understand that, and as a seller, 100%. But when it's a high dollar amount, hopefully the seller understands. Even if it's like $500, hopefully the seller understands that, like, hey, this is a large amount of money. I just want additional photos, and hopefully they understand. Like, hey, and please emphasize, like, hey, there's a really good clean copy and everything. I would like it, not like someone that's trying to, this PSA 10s, I need it to be flawless because I'm gonna crack it out and submit it to BGS, try to get the black label. There are people out there that do that, obviously. But anyway, thank you for listening to the story and everything. And like I said, hopefully this translated well, and you've learned something from this. But again, I'll be back with another subject or something to talk about in probably a few days, maybe a week or something like that. But put your comments below if you've ever had a bad experience with like a misgrade or a misgraded card, or something that you didn't agree with, like, how is this a 10? Like, or the opposite of, like, you got a 6 or 7 grade and like, what, this should have been a 9. There's that as well. But, we're all human. We make mistakes. That's why I always, my 9s and 8s, I always try to crack them, especially if they're a higher end card, crack them and send it one more time. If it gets the same grade, then it's sticking. That's usually what I do, especially with the cards that I get, where the 9 versus a 10 is like hundreds or not thousands of dollars difference. So, but thank you for listening to me, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you guys.